Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Legal Live. I'm glad you could join us, and we're excited. I'm Craig Wagner. I'm legal counsel for the Utah Association of Realtors, and we have Lance Harrison, who's also legal counsel for the UAR. So we're excited for today's Legal Live. What we're going to talk about are some of the rule changes to the Utah Administrative Code with regards to principal broker supervision. Now, these were rule changes that took place back in June of this year, but we wanted to highlight some of those changes and how they can affect all real estate licensees and, frankly, members of the public with regards to that. So, Lance, before we dive into these actual rule changes, in your role as legal counsel, why would it be important for licensees to be aware of any sort of rule changes in general coming from the Division of Real Estate?
Oh yeah, there's many reasons why it's a good idea for you and your business as a broker or an agent, and for your clients, right? You're a better agent and a better broker if you're up on the rules to protect the public and to become more informed and educated. But also it protects you from liability, from division violations. If rules are changing and you don't know and you're not changing your actions going forward as that rule applies to you, then you might have some liability, right? And we had a call just the other day on a simple rule change about the mandatory class, right? They didn't know that the mandatory class was required. And all of a sudden they were up for renewal and they probably went inactive. They didn't have the necessary requirements. So all of a sudden that really affects their business because they weren't up on the rules. So,
yeah, and I think the division does a really good job in publicizing some of these rules changes. Obviously, we want to inform our members about these rule changes. Certainly, you can call the legal hotline like this individual did about maybe the whys behind it and how it impacts them. So yeah, absolutely. So what I want to do is first I want to show everyone the division website, just so that you can kind of know how to navigate the website and where to find some of these rules. So here's the Division of Real Estate's website. You have realestate.utah.gov. You could simply type in Utah Division of Real Estate and find it pretty quickly. So what's nice is they have any sort of division updates, if you need to file a complaint, and other related issues that are on their website. So for real estate licensees, all you would have to do is just click on the real estate button, and that takes you to the real estate section of the Division of Real Estate's website. And where we're going to be talking about today is found under statutes and administrative rules. What's nice is you could check this periodically and click on the new administrative rules and see what are some of the most recent rule changes for the Division of Real Estate. So I would encourage you to do that. And we're going to spend some time in the Utah administrative rules. So you just click on this and it would take you to all of the administrative rules governing real estate licensees and principal brokers. So definitely wanted to make everyone aware of that. Now, I've put the most recent rule changes with regards to provisions for principal brokers. I've put them in a PowerPoint, so it's a little more user friendly for our purposes. So I'm not going to click on that, but I wanted to highlight what we're going to go through. So, go ahead.
Yeah, as you're pulling that up, I just wanted to say, Craig has done a great job organizing this, but the division also has their newsletters, right? That's probably the easiest way to see kind of a condensed version of the overall changes that really does a good job. And those are right on their website too, under the online services. So you can kind of see the condensed changes. So that's an easy way to kind of stay up to date, is stay up to date just on the newsletters, and you don't have to get into all the weeds sometimes.
Yeah, and with the division newsletter, you can subscribe and you can get those via email. pretty easy to stay connected to the Division of Real Estate. They do a really good job, and we have a really good relationship with them, the Utah Association of Realtors and the Division of Real Estate. So I kind of want to give a background as to why these rules were modified and added. So these are under the additional provisions applicable to brokers. And there's always been a responsibility for a principal broker to actively and reasonably supervise all of their agents. I mean, that's always been the case. But it wasn't necessarily fleshed out as to what did that mean? How do you actively and reasonably supervise? And is it just, I know it when I see it, or is it something to that effect? And so there were questions about that. This also is in conjunction with this last legislative session, where the Division of Real Estate bill that passed into law, it eliminated the requirement or the limitation on the number of offices a principal broker or a branch broker could actively supervise. Before that law change, a principal broker could actively supervise up to 3 offices, the main office and 2 branches. That was removed, that restriction, simply because there were questions as to whether or not that language favored one business model over another. And so now there's wide ability for a principal broker and a brokerage to conduct business how they see fit. But there is going to be, no matter how many offices you have, there's going to be this responsibility to have active and reasonable supervision. So I did want to highlight kind of the genesis behind that in going through this. So let's go ahead. We're gonna highlight some of these changes for principal brokers, and again, how they affect licensees that are affiliated with these principal brokers. So looking at these first requirements, a principal broker has active and reasonable supervision, and this includes the establishment of written policies, rules, and procedures, and systems that allow the broker to review, oversee, inspect, and manage. And then we're going to go through all of the things that fall under this. So very first is establishing these written policies and procedures. Now, Lance, is there a set format that needs to happen for principal brokers, or what are their options in establishing these?
Yeah, I think they leave a lot of this up to the broker, right? These are the rules, and they basically say, hey, it's got to be reasonable, and you got to have a plan of some sort. But here are some things that you can include. It should and have to include in your plan, but it's got to be written, and you got to be executing it.
Yeah, and along with this, it does seem to connote that you would, as a principal broker, make these written policies, rules, and procedures, make your licensees aware of these rules and procedures, right? So I can't tell you the number of times a realtor has called me and I've asked them about, for example, their independent contractors agreement. Maybe that would help establish based on the question that they're asking. And they say, well, I don't have an independent contractors agreement, or they're curious as to what rules and procedures their principal broker does have in place. So there's one thing to have them, and then there's another thing of making your licensees aware. So licensees, certainly you can ask about this, and principal brokers make it a point of letting your agents know about it. Okay, so you have this system and policies in place to oversee and inspect and manage what? Well, the very first thing is the real estate transactions performed by a licensee, either at the main office or the branch supervised by the broker. So again, active and reasonable supervision for a principal broker is overseeing the real estate activities that a real estate agent is providing. Pretty simple, pretty fundamental, but it's a key important point. Anything you want to add to that responsibility?
No, that's just the general overview, right? That's what they're in charge of. So yeah, for sure.
Okay. Next, again, this is all falling under the system and procedure written policies for a broker to actively and reasonably supervise. Second item, documents that may have a material effect upon the rights or obligations of a party to such real estate transaction. What would be some of these documents that would be related to the real estate transaction, Lance?
Probably contracts, I would guess, would be a big one that your
Yeah, I mean,
clients
the
are involved in.
agency agreements that are in place. I mean, these are things that are already kind of established in other parts of the rule where you need to have something in writing to define the scope of your relationship with your client. But again, this is establishing a system for the principal broker to review and manage and supervise these documents that have a material effect on the rights or obligations of a party to a real estate transaction. Perfect. So that's, I mean, again, these aren't crazy things, but it's now spelling out what is active and reasonable supervision. C, the filing, storage, and maintenance of such documents. Most principal brokers and agents are aware that there is a records retention requirement under the admin rules. And this is just, again, establishing those policies on how those are going to be managed and stored. The handling of trust funds. I mean, that's a pretty important one, but the Division of Real Estate has had some recent cases involving trust accounts. And so this is establishing those policies on how a principal broker is going to manage those.
And that one's kind of a loaded one, right? There's a lot of other rules involved with trust funds. So definitely you want to familiarize yourself with those, but having a plan and following those rules.
Yep, exactly. This is a big one. Okay. Advertising of any service for which a real estate license is required. Okay. I know that many of you out there watching this, you've probably read the division newsletter and you see quite a few violations dealing with advertising. This is going to establish that policy on how a licensee is to advertise. Do they need to check in with the principal broker? Do they have broad autonomy in doing that? What are your policies and procedures when it comes to the advertising, any sort of commercial message that a licensee is in trying to drum up business?
Yeah, and they leave it kind of open, right? For brokers, they're just saying be reasonable and active in overseeing the advertising of those services. So that's pretty open, but it does say you have a responsibility over those advertisements on some level. So some of these, there's some questions that aren't super clear how drilled down they need to be, but it leaves it open for interpretation.
Yeah, and the Division of Real Estate, I would imagine they're going to look at, again, this starting point of the rule is, well, what has the principal broker done in establishing written policies, rules, procedures, systems to oversee and review and inspect, in this case, the advertising of any service of a licensee. So again, that's where a principal broker needs to clearly communicate with their licensees. What is the policy whenever they send out a flyer, or what are the checks and balances to inspect those advertisements? Principal brokers are to familiarize licensees with the requirements of federal and state law governing real estate transactions, including prohibitions against discrimination. Lance, again, some broad ways that a principal broker could do this, but how would a principal broker know of any sort of federal and state laws governing real estate transactions in order to convey those things and familiarize their licensees with these requirements?
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing right now, right? Listening to resources that are talking about different requirements, paying attention to the newsletter, getting online, being connected with other people who are discussing changes or problems in the industry, right? So just getting networked and staying up to date is so important. And then attending educational type classes and doing what you can, I think, is the best way.
Yeah. So it's not meaning that you're going to become an expert in any of these things, but again, what are your policies, rules, and procedures in establishing and making sure that your licensees are familiarized with these requirements. Okay, principal brokers are to ensure that each person conducting licensed activity on behalf of the broker holds an active license. Okay, I know this sounds silly, but this happens. And where it traditionally happens is where maybe a licensee has failed to renew their license, and they're continuing to work as if they're a active licensee. And the division's done a really good job in notifying principal brokers as to when, via email, when their agents are about to need to renew their license, or their license is about to not be active any longer. So again, principal brokers, the division's not saying how many licensees you can have in your office or the number of offices you can have, but what systems and policies are you going to have in place to ensure that those that are doing real estate activities are active real estate agents. This is for the protection of the public, to make sure that active licensees are the ones conducting real estate activities. To ensure that each affiliated licensee is able to maintain reasonable and timely communication with the supervising broker or a competent designee to assist the licensee with real estate transactions handled by the brokerage. Okay, again, very basic elementary question, Lance, but why would this be part of rule? Why would it be necessary that a licensee could get a hold of their principal broker or someone that's been delegated by the principal broker to help them in real estate transactions?
Because licensees have questions, right? They're new, even experienced questions. They have things come up constantly that they need help with. And that's the broker's role at core, is to help them protect their clients and help them through. So if they're not available in a reasonable time to do those things, then they're failing those duties. And there it says a competent designee. Of course, they can't always be available. They're probably allowed to go on vacation occasionally, but they have to have a plan in place saying, hey, if I'm not available, this is what's going to happen. So there's always a resource for those licensees to go with their questions.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't mean a principal broker has to be available 24/7 and can't go on vacation or anything like that. But again, what are the written policies and procedures that specific brokerage wants to establish when it comes to this? So just establishing that, I think it's a valid point. Now, kind of along those same lines, this idea of a broker being available to their licensees, there is this additional requirement that I think is really unique, but I think it's really good. So a principal broker is to maintain adequate, reasonable, and regular contact with each affiliated licensee engaged in real estate to prevent or curtail practices that would violate provisions of the Utah Administrative Code. So being involved with their licensees, and however you want to establish that, it's not prescribed how you're supposed to do that. But look what also a principal broker, being reasonably available to the public in order to discuss or resolve complaints and disputes that may arise during the course of a real estate transaction in which the broker or affiliated licensee is involved. This is a way to frankly diffuse some of those issues where maybe there's a complaint about the services of a licensee. The principal broker can oftentimes step in and help resolve those issues. But they do need to be available to the public, and they need to be available to resolve those complaints and disputes during the course of that real estate transaction. So that's a new one that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and that one
go ahead.
Because I get calls a lot, right, about ethics, and people are worried and they say, oh, I'm having this issue with my agent, and I'm always referring them, hey, the first line is talk to the broker, right? Talk to the broker. And first of all, because it's the most effective one. An ethics complaint can take months. A division complaint takes months. We're talking about things that come up daily that they need help with, or they have issues about, or resolving complaints. And that is the first line to it to attach to those resolving those kinds of issues. So if they're not available, that's an issue, right? Because these are timely issues that they need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And we kind of discussed this at the beginning of, hey, you have these written policies and systems in place. You need to communicate that to the licensees. I kind of jumped the gun. That's what these next ones talk about, that you provide instruction, that you make it clear what your guidance and policies are, and then you make it clear to licensees and unlicensed staff regarding these policies. Lastly, and the division did want to make this very clear, that while a principal broker can delegate certain responsibilities, especially to branch brokers or associate brokers, they can't relinquish their overall responsibility for active and reasonable supervision. They are still going to be responsible. Whether or not they delegate those responsibilities or not, it still lies with the principal broker. And this last rule right here kind of brings us full circle, where the statutory change, eliminating the rule of three, so to speak, of the number of offices a principal broker could oversee, it leaves it up to the broker and the brokerage. That it says, in establishing such policies, rules, procedures, and systems, the broker shall consider the number of sales agents and associate brokers and the number and location of branch offices supervised by the broker. So again, the division's not saying, hey, this is the limit of number of agents you can have in a brokerage, or this is the number of offices you're allowed to have. Brokerages and brokers have full autonomy, but they can't obfuscate their responsibilities when it comes to these new clarifying active and reasonable supervision responsibilities that a broker has for their licensees. So just wanted to highlight those things. Are there any questions? I'm trying to check to see if there's any questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat that I'm aware of. If there is, I'm not seeing it, so I apologize if there are some questions. That's just kind of a brief overview. So principal brokers, start to establish those policies. If you don't have them in place, let your agents know about these policies and document your instruction of your agents. And that should better help serve members of the public and give a better support system to licensees from their principal brokers. Anything that you want to add, Lance, on what we've covered?
Yeah, and just that last point you said, it's going to be unique to your office, right? And your number of agents, and every office is going to approach this a little differently so that it serves their agents the best. So an office with 2 or 3 agents or 1, is going to be very different than these large offices. But that's good. And that's great that the division is opening up like that, saying, hey, here are the outlines, the guidelines, you take it where you need to go for your agents.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Lance and I think we just want to take a minute. We want to say that we really appreciate all of our realtor members. We really appreciate the volunteers of our association. It is fantastic to be able to answer your questions. We enjoy being a resource for you. We hope that there's some value proposition to it when it comes to being able to call on us, and we hope that we can provide you with resources to be successful. And we hope to continue to do this. Get out and vote. Today is election day, so get out and vote if you haven't done it. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again. Take care.